Welcome to Starting Over Podcast. I'm your host, Edward Shelton, aka Dark Logos, and this is the show where we look at the strategies, tactics, and mechanics behind the game of heroclix. Well, it's been an interesting week and a half. Primarily, I had a show. I was mostly recorded, almost done. Reset my computer, and of course, I lost it. Then add in States prep, not going to States. Trying to set up a date, the date canceling on me, and pretty much resetting of the school year and not school year, of the trimester, and trying to get the stuff ready for debate for the kids, and it's just like, and we're done. So there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of stuff that's been going on. So I want to talk about something today. Initially, I was going to go and revisit WWE and talk about the implications. There were some good comments on the last show. I think I did partially misread submission, somewhat saying it's like Stunning Blow. It has similarities to Stunning Blow. So we're going to call this the Popper problem. Okay, we're going to call this the Popper problem. And I know some of you are going to say, come on, man. Can anybody do anything right? Can anybody do anything right in your eyes, Dark Logos? And the answer is yes. Just because things are going well or good does not mean that there are or are not problems. Okay? So, let's sort of jump into it. Let's go with the core presupposition of what Popper is about. And that presupposition is that the competitive landscape is accessible with is accessible if it was primarily based around low rarity figures that have a low value cost. And by having a low value cost, the cost of entry would allow those that want to be competitive but are put off by the high cost of, rares, super rares and chases, and even con exclusives. Anyone that's put off by that, they can come into a format and compete and have the potential to win. Now, I think that this is a noble thing to do, and I also think this is a positive thing to do. But we have to always be looking at, is the presupposition true? Or better yet, we started in a place under this reasoning. Is our conclusion meeting that goal? Or is it what's really going on is people obfuscating their real intentions just to receive online status, or just to turn up strife? So let's touch that last point, and then we'll go to the previous point next. The first point second. All right, so if we look at states and you look at the competition and you say, look, man, the turnout is the same turnout it has been, or turnout has gone down. So what happened to all these people who said, yo, man, if it was sealed, I would play. If it was lower rarity stuff, I would play. I'm good, but I can't afford all this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Where are those guys at? Real talk. If those guys are not showing up to the event, I'm sorry, at that stage, it really does prove there's nothing that we can do to grab more people in. Okay? And I think this is a wake up call for Wiz Kids, is a wake up call for The Rock about how important states is, and maybe one more major event where it's operating under this pauper format. And I have this reasoning, so bear with me as I say it. There are a ton of people that are just trolls. There's a ton of people that just want to be contrarian just to be contrarian. And sometimes they say things that sound good. Okay? But they have no motivation, no foot behind it. Okay? It's just a placement to win an argument. No one is ever taking it seriously and thinking, well, maybe, just maybe, someone will actually take a legit position on it and invest economically. A lot of times in our actions, we do not view what we do as having consequences beyond ourselves. And in reality, that is never true. All consequences, all actions have consequences beyond oneself. Okay? Even the person on the island, their whole existence has consequences beyond oneself, because one did not spawn, nor birth, nor feed oneself out of existence. Okay? So there's impact of that. Okay? So taking that next step, that next logical viewpoint forward, if the amount of people that said, hey, if this was, this pauper thing goes on, I would participate. And let's just say it would add 10%. The hardcore people are going to play whatever. They're going to play anyway. But let's just say that you were going to add 10%. Was your original expectation to add 10%? Or was your original expectation to add somewhere around 20 or 30 or even 40% new attendance? Those bookmarks and benchmarks, those benchmarks need to be there. Because if those benchmarks are not there, then any growth or stagnation, no one's able to give an objective view on it. Okay, so if we look back 2 years, from now and say, hey, pauper had minor impact on the competitive scene because it's able to increase the population by 10% per turnout. Now, right now, in some places, 10% per turnout is just gaining one person. Okay? 10% in some other venues might be 2 people. Okay? So, is that significant? Realistically, for the longevity of the game and more so for the competitive nature of the game going forward. These are serious questions that need to be asked, that are not being asked, let alone being looked at. Okay? So, if the original goal for pauper was to create a situation in which we're getting more players, and we're looking at it from a percentile perspective, how many overall competitive players are we gaining in the United States, in Canada, or any other location that we're running the pauper event? Okay? So there's some countries, like Brazil, where, like a majority of what they're running is already a pauper event, and there's no way that you're going to gain more people because that's how they're playing. And that's not even shade. Like, if you had looked at some of the results, that's pretty much what it is. So because of that, if we look at Europe, would pauper generate more players? If we look in Asia, would pauper generate more players? More than likely not. China, I don't even know. I haven't seen a player from China appear. I'm not saying there aren't any. I'm just saying I haven't, encountered any. All right, now, how many competitive players are we really gaining overall? So if we just said 10%, all 50, well, I know Kansas didn't have one. Let's just say 48 states, and then we add in the Canadian provinces. So let's just say out of total, on average, is all this event planning worth to gain somewhere between 50 to at best 100 players. Okay? And this is between US and Canada. All right. Is that worth it at the stage of the game it is now? Because is one new player per area or two new players per area going to be sustainable to keep a venue open or to keep events at a venue? All right. Are those people eventually willing to upgrade into unlimited competitive play? And so there are some realistic questions about that. Because in all honesty, I think game design needs to taper off all the powerful stuff being in the higher rarities. There needs to be more niche in the higher rarities and more ground level stuff in the lower rarities. But at the same time, I do not think that just because we make the game economically accessible, that those people that have excuses will then sort of, actually do something. And I think that is a legitimate problem. I think that is a legitimate problem where I don't believe that we're going to see a renaissance of the game off of this. I hope we do, but intellectually, I don't think that way. And again, I think it's mainly because the ones that complain and don't do will keep complaining. There will be a perpetual amount of excuses. There will always be a perpetual amount of excuses. Oh, hey, I wasn't off that weekend. I couldn't make up a team. Oh, man, I don't want to drive that far. You mean I have to drive 2 hours to get to that event? It's not worth it. I could just spend that time, at the local store. But they're the people complaining. Okay? They are the people complaining. So, like I said, there's this realistic problem that kicks in when we look at this deeply is, are people willing to sort of put up and shut up? Are people willing to invest that weren't before? Are people willing to show out in numbers to these events and actually say, hey, these types of events are worth investing in, and there was a clientele there, waiting all along? Because if we can prove that on a national level, that let's just say turnout increases up to 30%. Boom. I think you have an argument there. You have a legit argument there for having Pauper at least, once or twice a year for it to be an official format. Now, if it's only somewhere in between, 0 to 10%, then I think it's really novelty. We would have eventually gotten that competitive person anyway into standard competitive. Pauper is just where we're getting them introduced at. Okay? So I think being realistic about the numbers is essential. So again, we're looking at realistic problems. We're looking at realistic situations. We're actually trying to figure out, is the game on the decline, or can the game go somewhere else? Can the game move up? And here's my thought process. I haven't seen any new players come in from WWE. If anyone's willing to tell me otherwise, and if the areas I've been in are a minority, then so be it. I will fully admit that what I'm experiencing is a minority viewpoint. But in all honesty, where is the influx of players? Where is this, rising tide that's supposed to come in? And I think that Pauper is perfect. It lines up. It says, hey, man, you're just coming into the game. You're a competitive guy or gal. You want to come in and compete. You like your WWE stuff. We have a perfect format. Here's a chance for you to potentially win some more stuff. Here's some, advice that we can give you, yada, 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 yada. Okay? So it's the perfect, sort of storm for this. Here's WWE. Here's new players. Here's a big competition, new players. It's new player friendly. But it's sort of like New Guy Night. And we all experience this with New Guy Night. New Guy Night, the person would bring in their brother, bring in their cousin, bring in their girlfriend, wife, friend from work, to play a game of heroclix so that you can get that New Guy Night Ellie. Okay? We knew that person wasn't ever going to go play heroclix. We knew it. Okay? But what was it really there for? It was there for the established player to try to have an incentive to try to get new players, which I don't think it worked because the New Guy Night program went away. It went away completely, like the dodo bird to a sailor's belly. That's where New Guy Night went. And because of that, it creates a situation where we honestly have to say, is Pauper no different than New Guy Night? Except we're not bringing in anybody, we're just throwing the party. Okay? So, there's that. Now, the more realistic question that has to be dealt with is this. Is 300-point modern so off-putting that people had to create an alternative to that format just so that the game feels either more balanced, more fair, or more accessible? Okay? Now we're hitting a core issue, is that Pauper is not solving a problem, it's actually a symptom. And the symptom is how WizKids is making a profit off of the game versus the actual the long-term playability of the game, or the structural mechanics of the game is not congruent. Okay? So we're buying and it's profitable, but if a player is burning out in, let's say, 3 years, then we have a problem. And so with WizKids, the main reason I say a player burns out in 3 years is because it usually will go like this. A player comes in. Their first year, there's about 5 sets that they enjoy. Okay, cool. They go into their second year. There might be, 5 sets in some storyline, something or other. Okay, cool. Their third year, they're bound to run into a celebration year or a big event year. Okay, on average. And at that point in time, there's like 10 sets in the year, and their wallet is screaming because they can't buy it all. They can't buy it all. It's the stomach is full, the body is about to pass out, and you're just like, oh, no more ice cream, please, no more ice cream. Oh gosh, my stomach, my stomach, my stomach, and you can't throw up. It's just like that. It's your stomach is crammed full of crap, and you can't throw up. Okay, and eventually, to relieve that pressure, and they'll look at it, and this is like, oh, I bought all this stuff. They'll be like, oh, I'm gonna play, but not buy so much. Okay, so they play, and they go to their second retirement. They're okay. They go into their third retirement. They're okay. Once they hit their fourth retirement, they lose all that stuff they bought in that third year. Then it's like, oh, I just lost $5,000. Like, I just lost $5,000. Like, if you look at that, like a whole year's of product, like I just lost $5,000, or you might say is I just lost $2,000. I just lost $2,000. That includes all of the events, special event prizes. That includes your Connelly's. That includes your special year 18 different sets that come out. And now, after all that burnout, after all that effort, and then seeing like, man, I just lost a ton of money, they will retire from the game because they see, I'm constantly trying to keep up with the Joneses. The tactics really aren't changing that much. I'm being resold the same thing over and over and over again with a different name on it. Then I can definitely understand, how you're getting player turnover and you're not getting a lot of new players in. Because a lot of the players that would still be playing this game are not playing this game for other miniatures games. And then the question comes in, is why? Like for every person that we get from Warhammer 40K, how many people do we get from, the Star Wars miniatures or Attack Wing or any of those other games? Like most people leave HeroClix to other games that are board games or card games in some situations. I've seen more than, the fair share leave for Magic, but a good chunk of them leave for other board games. And it's not necessarily that those games are less complicated. I would argue that most of the games that people leave HeroClix for are many times more complicated. But I think there is a level of the product management is a lot cleaner. The mechanics interact properly. There is a diversity, in the play space. There is uniformity in language, a sticking to the barriers that are put on the game. While there's always things that are just OP, okay, it doesn't seem like there's a bunch of, whack-a-mole situations that are coming up that, you have to fix. And so those other companies may not be able to, be like WizKids and turn out sets. And so those games usually have attrition because the product isn't coming out. And the other person finds something else to do, and eventually that other something else to do becomes their main thing. Okay? So the issues that we start having to legitimately think about is sort of going back to the game experience of heroclix. Is standard 300 point heroclix fun? And can we continually play it? And if the standard 300 point modern is not fun, then we really have a game design problem. And then we can try to identify, why is it not fun? What's not fun? What is really motivating us to start looking at other formats? Why are other formats way more viable in our opinion? Why is it that economics is a huge argument in fun and fairness? Okay? Why is economics a huge problem in fun and fairness? If I say, look, super rares are great and they'll help out your team, how much do they help out your team? If I had nothing but super rares and chases, is that more powerful than an on-faction team with a mix of commons, uncommons, rares, super rares? And if the answer is, look, the super rare and chase team raffle stomps everything, then yes, you have a balance issue, and the byproduct is you have an economic issue. All right. So those things start to align themselves together to create a bigger problem, a bigger construct of an issue. Now I understand, WizKids wants to make the dollar dues, the ducats, the Benjamins, the cheese, the cheddar, the paper, all the Benjamins, baby. I understand that. I have full respect for that. Okay, I like my dollar dues as well. But what is a more consistent problem that I'm seeing is not the dollar dues. It's how the dollar dues are being generated. Okay? So even more so, go with the WWE starter set. We know, you gave us a trash starter set. You gave us one good starter set and a trash starter set. And you're going to sell the trash starter set because you put a terrain in there that was good. You couldn't make the whole thing good for some reason. For some reason, the whole thing can't be good. I can't think of a Fast Forces where the entire thing was good. Hell, I can't think of a starter where the entire thing was good. Okay? Where I'm like, man, I want to play every one of these figures. Why is that? Why? There's only usually one figure that's good. Well, WizKids wants you to buy it and then have an incentive to go and buy other figures to work around it. If that base thing is too good, or at least decent, the fear is that someone will never move past that starter set, which I've never known anyone that's played a game that's never moved past a starter set. Okay? So, again, if we start looking at our accessibility problem, why isn't there, let's just go back to the Mighty Thor. That Hulk was good. That Loki was good. That was the first time that we've actually had, two figures. Actually, three. That Cap wasn't bad either. We had three figures in that starter that was pretty good. They never took off, really, except Hulk. Loki, Loki's been Loki. And we're looking at a situation that even when everything favors you to play Loki, no one's thinking about Loki. No one's thinking about Loki. Okay. All right, so let's also talk about another issue with Pauper, which is I think Pauper is a prime example of no 2x2s or larger unless it's terrain. No 2x2s are larger unless it's terrain. And I think that starts to balance out Pauper a lot more. Okay? And there's a great trinity that I'm seeing appearing in the Pauper format. It's Juggernaut, Onslaught, Nimrod. And so it goes like this. Juggernaut just comes in and can just royally mess up Onslaught. Okay? Can just royally mess up Onslaught. Alright. Onslaught can take out Nimrod by having his backup attack him. Nimrod can take out Juggernaut. Okay? Now, I know some of you say, but not if I run 300-point Juggernaut. And then I'd be like, no, you're not running 300-point Juggernaut. You're just not. Okay? Don't talk big. Don't throw that trash over here. We already know that you're not doing that. All right. So, realistically, and I am saying it this way. Realistically, you're looking at 3 Colossals that are shifting the entire focus of this new format on top of them. Whereas it would have been better to just say, you know what, for right now, since we're filling this out, Dark Phoenix Colossals are banned. Or Colossals are banned. The terrains are not. Oh, okay, cool. Now there's time for people to think. If folks say, but what about my vehicles? Just like they're banned. Oh, okay. All right. 2x2s except terrain is banned. All right, great. Let's play. Because it's still in its infancy. There's no standard. Okay. There's things that people would like, quote unquote, to have happen, and things that people are willing to accept, quote unquote, to happen. But this is still in its infancy. Infancy. Okay? And since it's still in its infancy, there are a lot of things that can be done to tweak it. There's things that you can sort of just say, ooh, maybe this isn't the set for everything to perfectly align with us. Let's try to make this a little bit better. Let's try to create a situation where we are more than likely going to keep people interested, where the entire thing is not about, 3 figures. Okay? So, once you realize that, oh, okay, everything is about, these 3 figures, then what happens to that WWE that you had? Now, no, I'm willing to say this. WWE has performed really, really well from what I've seen. Okay? But at the same time, there's some stuff there that I'm like, okay, I can understand how frustrating it could be if you're new and then all of a sudden, your WWE guys are not performing the way that you want them to perform. Okay? I can understand that. All right. So, where are, where do we go from here is the real question. Where do we go from here? And I think that we have a couple of things to look at that are big. All right. So, first things first, I think that if you don't have a target, whatever you hit will be okay. All right. If you don't have a destination, anywhere is your destination. Okay, and that's really important to think about in terms of organizational building and planning. You do not have a successful organization without goals, metrics, and understanding where you want to be, in a year, 5 years, heck, tomorrow. Like, it can be that big of a deal. All right. If WizKids and Rock says currently, right now, we can guesstimate globally, we have about, and let's just be nice about it. Let's just say globally, we have an active competitive base of high level competitive, somewhere between 400 to 500, and that's me being really, really nice. Okay. To casual, going to their local store to compete, going up to somewhere around let's just be nice and say 1,500. That's me being nice. I don't even think it's that big globally. I don't think there's that many players globally. Okay. All right. Now, if that is the case, how are we going to grow our base? Okay. And even more so, the win would know how many people sign up for the win on average. So you can just know how many new players you're getting. Okay. Now, will you know every mom and pop, I play at home, forget the system, I'm tired of y'all person? No, you're not. You're just not. I'm not going to lie about that. I'm not going to front. Are those people part of the economic equation? Yes, they're probably a bigger part of the economic equation than I care to admit. All right. But let's just say for right now, that's what we're primarily focusing on, is the people that go to the store to compete, the people that will go and maybe travel to an event or two. They'll think about the WKO, and they really hope their store gets one so they don't have to go anywhere. Okay, those people. All right. So if we think about all of those people, how many of those people are we trying to grow? Okay. What is our advertising looking like? Because WizKids, like News Report, your advertising sucks. Your advertising sucks. And you're like, but we're in the trade magazines. Like, no. I haven't seen a WizKids ad in a comic book for years. For years. Now, you could tell me what the ROI is on it. You could tell me, what the ROI is for, hell, a YouTube commercial. Like, what's your ROI on that? Okay? Because realistically, this game is functionally primarily staying alive through shelf space, which is your retailers doing the work, where they're putting the product so people can see it, and your community. It's realistically not WizKids' advertising arm. Okay? The advertising arm, the only thing it does is sell to retailers. It does nothing to lend a helping hand and try to sell directly to the customer. All right? It doesn't. Which is one of the WizKids' major failings. I can see a app ad on my phone 50 million times. Okay? Because I'm being targeted because I'm a quote-unquote gamer. And I've seen so many Magic the Gathering ads. It's stupid. But you know what? Never seen a WizKids ad. I haven't. And I don't see what's so hard about making a commercial that works. Okay? You can hire an ad agency to put out a commercial for, a comic book. Put a commercial on your phone. And with the comic books, let's be honest, comic books really aren't for kids anymore. Comic books are for teenagers and adults, and primarily adults. I wouldn't give my nephew a comic book right now. I sure the heck wouldn't give him X-Men. I wouldn't give him Batman. I wouldn't give him Justice League. I would not give my nephew a comic book. I would do almost everything in my power to keep him away from comic books. They're that much not for kids. And I know some of you be like, well, that's a little extreme, Dark Logos. And I'm like, yeah. There are a lot of ideas that I wouldn't want my children to digest if I had children. In comic books. Most of the comic books are there to usurp a lot of ideas and try to prop up some new modern ideas. Things are more like the Authority recently than I care to admit. This is when the Authority meets reality, not the idealistic. Anyway, I'm not going to go any further than that. So, WizKids, get your ads up. Okay, get your ads up. All right, that's the first thing. Next thing I would say is, the only thing rock can do is try to sweeten the pot and have some sort of event to try to get more people to, which is really hard. When you're looking at it from the event planning and trying to grow from event planning, functionally it's the local body that is there. I think another element that comes in is there really needs to be also an advertising arm for The Rock, in the sense of saying, hey, everybody listens to Daniel Powell. Daniel Powell gets, 5 shekels a month to tell everybody these are all the upcoming events. Okay? So that way, at least there's someone broadcasting reminders out there. Can't be me. I don't do my shows frequently enough. Okay? Can't be me. All right? All right. So there's that. That's the only thing I can tell The Rock to do. All right? Just find those bases and those voices, and then have them and pay them to pretty much shill events. And just be like, boom, we got an event here, we got an event here, we got an event here. Next month, we got events here, and here. I would also say, Rock, put your foot into people's buttocks, into these venues' buttocks a little bit more. I shouldn't be planning for an event. If I'm planning for states or a Super Q or anything else, I need to know over a month and a half out. And you just have to warn people and say, look, I, as a leader in The Rock, cannot either endorse your event or sanction your event because you couldn't get the event to me a month and a half before the date. Now, if you want to go for a later date, we can do that. And this is where your event would land. But if you can't come and commit to me on these dates, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not putting your event in. Because then I can't advertise it. And if I can't advertise it, then what's going to end up happening is you're going to have a low turnout. Then you're going to say that the whole system is bad, whereas you didn't do the system properly. And I'll say this, again, from the Corey experience. A majority of venues do really poor at Super Qs because they don't advertise and they put in their events stupid late. Okay? Those two things bomb turnout because some people want to take off work or have to take off work to travel 4 hours. They have to get the sitter. They got to do all the honey-do crap. They got to massage their wife's back and feet for the 10 to 12 days before they can step outside. Okay? Some people have to do that. Okay? Now, when we look at that reality, Rock, and you want return customers, which is the venue, I would just be like, look, I want you as a return customer. I respect you. I can't do this because I'm taking your money, but I know you're not going to get your money back. Okay? You just have to tell them that. So, anyway, it becomes difficult and it becomes frustrating, and I understand that. And I know some people will say, but what about the players? What should the players do? And I would fundamentally say the players aren't at fault. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a player. I'm saying that is that when it comes down to the root of all these issues, what WizKids and Rock is trying to do is convince us to continue doing what we're doing. Okay? So the players are the customers. And realistically, do the players have an obligation to be like, hey, we're going to set up situations, try to, to do a new player drive and try to get as many new players as we possibly can in. While that is good, that is not necessarily, in terms of context of looking at what I'm talking about, that's not really your job. Now, if you want to try to do it to help out the store, bravo to you. Okay? Definitely bravo to you. The only thing that I think us as the players can do is say, WizKids, I'm seeing people turn out for this. I'm seeing people turn out for that. I'm seeing people liking this. I'm seeing people liking that. And unfortunately, WizKids doesn't really have a forum to hear feedback other than us meeting in person. Which then, I hate saying it, it's like if you go to a con, you are the elite because you're able to get your voice heard by Kenny, by Zoran, by Chris, or whoever else, Barnstable. Any number of the WizKids staff would be able to at least listen and document your actual complaint or your actual praise or what you would like to see done. Okay? And I think WizKids' failure to do that effectively is seen in Dice Masters. It's clearly seen in Dice Masters. You had a game that was rivaling, like 3 to 4 years ago, you had a game that was rivaling heroclix turnout at Origins. For Dice Masters, I think they were like 7 to 10 tables deep. Just Dice Masters. This isn't, Attack Wing or anything like that. This is just Dice Masters. And you know what happened? Poor R&D. Lack of balancing things out. Good player communication. You had functionally a game that went mainstream big. And the profitability was stupid. You're talking about dice, which your average cost is like a batch of 20 is 1 cent on the mass production scale. Okay? you're almost talking about the same profit ratio as cards. Way more profit ratio than heroclix. And because WizKids fail to have communication channels in play, listen to the complaints and feedback of their customer base, and most importantly, did not respond timely to problems in their game, that game dwindled down, down, so bad that when we were at Worlds, how many tables was for Dice Masters? A few. Okay? There's a couple, like the Attack Wing stuff didn't really change. It's Dice Masters. Dice Masters die. And some people will say, hey, why did Dice Masters die? Why wasn't the show? Where are all the people? And WizKids didn't listen. And I'll even more so like emphasize this. And I said this before on the podcast, probably over the years. One year after my friend Megalotus Man left heroclix to go play Dice Masters because it was quote unquote a better game. And again, this is like version 1 with 1 or 2 expansions, and he was running Dice Masters at our local gaming store. And even with that, they were getting like almost as many people we were getting for heroclix. It was like a good 8 to 10 people every Friday night. But when I went to Worlds to try to understand, like what's going on, I talked to 2 people that were running events, and they were trying to get me to come play Dice Masters, and they're friendly. And so I ended up striking up a conversation with them, and I said, what is, your, issue with Dice Masters, because the game seems pretty big. And they said, WizKids not responding to questions on the forum. And also, lack of communication by WizKids. And lo and behold, year after year after year, nothing changed. And the game is functionally dead. The game is dead. Who killed it? It was WizKids. It wasn't the players. So, anyway, I'm leaving it at that. I sound like an old man. I'm repeating myself. I'm going over points 4 to 5 times. So, that's it for today's show. I'd like to thank you all for listening. You can follow me at StartOverPod. It came from outer space and told me that the great YouTube universe folding event is coming. Be ready. Be ready, be ready, be ready. With that note, I am making it clear there are some changes coming to YouTube. I don't know if I'm going to be on this platform in the next 2 to 3 years. If some people paid attention to what I said during the Carlos Maza apocalypse, that the only people that would be left are the radicals that don't care about monetization, and that eventually YouTube would have to make sure everyone's monetized and start kicking people off, or they would just end up being stuck with a huge data bill. Well, lo and behold, listening to a couple of different shows that talk about YouTube, I am not the content that YouTube wants. They don't want you to sit here on YouTube with me in your browser tab hidden away while you're working on whatever you're working on. Okay? They don't want that. They want you with eyeballs on the screen so that they can rotate the ads past you and know that when they're charging for those ads, they can justify it. Because they can know if you're on screen or not, or on tab or not. They don't like they don't like the long form, inactive, or lack of engagement communication that is this type of show. So I don't know what I would do once YouTube decides to come to my show and say, hey man, you haven't been making money for us for a long while now. Your viewer count is low. I don't know what's going to happen. So if the day comes, everything shuts down. I don't know if I'm just going to stop doing the show, or go to another platform, or get absorbed by Married with Clicks or something. I don't know. Whatever it may be, that's down the road. I'm gonna keep trying to do this as long as I can. But eventually, all things, they come to an end. But it seems like YouTube is actually looking at trying to end things, and that's frustrating. So you can email me at startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. That's startingoverpodcast@gmail.com. If you wish to opine, keep it piffy, keep it interesting, keep it awesome, baby. Let me know, am I wrong about the popper problem? You can donate to the show at startingoverpodcast.blogspot.com. That's startingoverpodcast.blogspot.com. All right, that's it for today's show. I thank you all for listening and being patient. And remember, we all have